Welcome. You have joined the SAME Resilience Committee's webinar. We're dated here at August the 10th of 2017. Our commitment and our focus today is in support of the posts. Thank you very much for joining, and we'll try and hopefully have some useful information for you to bring back to the posts and some additional food for thought. First of all, we thought that we'd cover the status of the committee support to the post as it is here in mid-August. So we wanted to mark down some very key points. First of all, we have developed a committee website. It is certainly under the Resilience Committee banner. However, technically we are now the Resilience and Cybersecurity Committee. You can get to our site through the SAME.org national website, and we really would like you to kind of visit that on a regular basis, because it's really going to have a lot of information, some of which we're going to cover in this webinar. What we started out early too was creating a mission definition for the Resilience and the Cybersecurity Committee, in addition to the guidance given in Goal 4 of the SAME Strategic Plan. A little bit of background to that was that, as you all may know, and people who have been in the industry for a while, there have been very key words such as asset management and sustainability that have been mainstays for many years, even decades. What we wanted to do was to, for lack of a better term, plant a flag with an existing definition that we could move forward with the committee. Those definitions can be found on the website. But to abbreviate the answers, resilience we define through an executive order in the previous administration that covered the definition of resilience for infrastructure as looking at man-made and non-man-made threats in the view of resilient design, response, and recovery. We know that there are other avenues to go by that include climate change and human health and human quality of life. But those are things that are not directly related to the direction we want to go in the committee at this time. In addition to that, on Goal 4, the two words that come out the most that you have to keep in mind are awareness and training. Those two words are paramount as you're putting your programs together at the post level, along with following the definitions that we've set forth so far. Our second topic I think that we talk about here is that we've established 5 subcommittees. The technical advisors, or what we call technical advisory board, is made up heavily of folks who came from the TIS council that we have now dovetailed into our existing committee. The partnership subcommittee are those folks that will maintain and expand existing federal agency sponsorships and partnerships, as well as those with commercial entities and other agencies at the local and state level as well. Our cyber committee is specifically focused on our cybersecurity mission, which is very focused on industrial controls and on certain aspects of cybersecurity with respect to energy programs. Our programs group is just, as you would think, they will help with putting together webinars and other events and programs and support our JETC mission of putting together very valuable and pertinent tracks during the national conference. Finally, and probably most important too as we outreach to the post, is a regional and post outreach subcommittee. It's headed by a gentleman by the name of Gary Gordon, and his role and mission is to form a conduit and a continuing regular conversation with the regional vice presidents and the post managers and people in the board and committees that are missioned with working on your resilience goals. Next, we've also, and this is kind of a new concept as well, we've developed and continue to develop and expand a knowledge management system. You might see the term KMS used on our website. That will be a clearinghouse for all relevant resilience programs and events from all national committees. You may or may not know that other resilience programs are emanating from both the, or I shouldn't say more than both, the environmental, the architectural, and the energy and sustainability committees, to name a few. And they are being supported by young members and student chapters as well. We want to make sure that all those good things are also migrated into our knowledge management system so that outside, our sustaining members, you folks in the posts, can have access to a one-stop shop for all information that's related to our committee missions. Finally, we've completed a local resilience workshop in Boston to partner with local, state, and federal agencies to get a better feel for how we can best partner in the future and utilize SAME post resources in support of their future mission as well. At this time, I also want to mention that we've made two very valuable contacts in the last couple weeks, one of which has been with the National Governors Association, and they're meeting up, their summer meeting up in Providence. What we learned from that was not only that resilience is a hugely important issue with respect to the state and local agencies, but as well, the FEMA coordinator, Administrator Long, was there and also relayed to us that there are still ongoing challenges in communication between FEMA and Corps of Engineers and the Defense coordinating officers at the regional level in working on emergency response and recovery. All parties feel that SAME has a role to play in this, and we'll talk more about that in the coming slides. But finally, I also want to mention something that came up in our call earlier today, our committee call, and that was we've also outreached to certain state events, most recently a Resilient Virginia forum that was a two-day forum in Richmond. And basically those folks there are tied in with the Rockefeller Foundation and their Resilient Cities program, and especially with them focusing on the area of the Tidewater region in Norfolk that is seeing significant subsidence as well as sea level rise. Their discussions on resilient design and where they go in the future are very much paramount in their near-term planning process. So enough for this slide. Let's go to the second slide, and we're going to talk about some of the lessons learned from the workshop. Basically what we did is we invited a broad cross-section of agency partners. These were folks from the Army and the Navy and the Air Force locations within the Boston area, as well as other federal agency partners, both from FEMA, the VA up in Portsmouth, the US DOT, et cetera. But what we also found out was that also inviting those local stakeholders from the city and from the county that are involved in especially state emergency management was very, very key to this dialogue as well. Commercial stakeholders I would define at this point as other folks that are part of utility concerns, such as the local electric, gas, water, and telecommunications utilities that would be affected by an event and are also within this dialogue and part of the responders along with these other local, federal, and state agencies. I would also say at this time one other key lesson learned was to do what you can to present and to get going a vibrant two-way dialogue based on both your SAME representatives and those other stakeholders that I just talked about. I should mention on the SAME side, we had representatives certainly from the Post there. We had representatives, the RVP was there, representing the region obviously, and a number of the committee chairs from our local resilience committee, as well as national office representatives such as Joe Schrodel and Nick Desport. So we really had all levels of SAME within this dialogue as well. But getting back to what I think is key is if you can mention to these folks without going on too much of a one-way dialogue of, hey, we're SME and have all these great resources, to really draw out from them where are the needs, where do they see that our resources and the potential facilitation and how we can be a communication conduit can help with their mission. And once we had that dialogue going, we received really good feedback, very positive feedback. Also, as I mentioned before, one of the lessons learned is posts can become facilitators also by either co-hosting or sponsoring local events with all these partners talking about resilience in all of these various components, whether it be design, response, or recovery. They also seem very interested in us collaborating, us being SAME at the local level, on local, regional, and state resilience training events, which are ongoing and pretty routine. What we found amazingly, at least in Boston, is that other than certain exercise opportunities, the entities don't dialogue a great deal. And I think it's because everybody's busy, they have their own missions, but if we can kind of get into that mix and help to push that dialogue, I think that would be very useful, and it also makes us a player and a stakeholder as well. In addition, other workshop lessons that I want to talk about is they encourage that maybe we could do some resilience training programs, especially with our younger members and student chapters, many of which might have had some general or generic introduction to resilience issues, but this would really get them into the trench with the stakeholders, and I think would hopefully generate more interest on their part as well. Also, as I mentioned before, the stakeholders both at the federal and emergency management agency level, which are those EMAs in the next dot that I have down there, stated that help from the post with post resources with tabletop exercises would be useful as well. So I think an outreach or question to try and participate would be good for you folks as well. Also, our support and the resources we have, especially with sustaining members, to help to support, develop, and mature some of the local disaster recovery plans that they currently have. Next dot would be to assist in the performance of pre- and post-disaster assessments. Again, we have a number of people even here in Chicago who are tied in with the state of Illinois and other agencies to perform some of these tasks, and really all of the resources, anything we can bring to bear, seems to be quite appreciated by the agencies. I think I mentioned this before, but maybe I'll say this in a more succinct statement like on the slide. They're really looking for help to facilitate the conversation with all the stakeholders and our SAME resources on the long-term thinking for resilient design, also how standards will change and also mature, as well as the subsequent regulations. I think this is a very important point that you can talk at the local level on a value added from the post. Finally, I think in starting this, it is imperative as you get this information and you get traction with the dialogue to assign a post, if there isn't one already, point of contact, or even more importantly, a working group to address the post-specific resilience goals. Now, one thing you might want to consider is some of the posts also may have existing POCs or a subcommittee on readiness. And basically what readiness has matured into is many of the objectives and goals of the Resilience Committee. So that also might be some way you can put resources to bear. Finally, as I wrap this up, I just want to share with you some thoughts as your resilience programs move forward at the post level. Please become familiar with the resources on our committee's website, especially the knowledge management system. For example, we are just migrating some of the streamer responses that we receive from posts that receive the resilience streamer with distinction. This might give some of your posts an idea of different types of events that you might want to sponsor and a little bit of background at what your colleagues in other areas of the country are doing. I would also suggest to establish a regular communication with Gary and his regional post outreach subcommittee. He is now establishing kind of, I would guess, geographical sub-managers in both the West, Central, and Eastern United States that are also going to assist him in this task. Also, please keep an eye out in the coming couple months for future webinars and what we call TED Talks that are going to be coordinated through the committee's monthly outreach calls. Some of them may be during the time we have the call, others may be at a separate time, but we want to have these focused talks to kind of keep you up to date with what's going on in the resilience world, and both on events, but in most cases, new ways to look at many of these needs. But also, as I mentioned before, with respect to the streamer, and there are a lot of comments and questions coming out, as I mentioned before, check out our database with the KMS. Finally, as I wrap up, I can't emphasize enough that our committee is here to assist you in the post. Really don't want you to hesitate to contact myself or any of the other committee sub-chairs that are listed on the website. I think you'll find that in the final slide is my both email and voicemail and phone contact. We really want you to engage with the committee for any questions, not only on programs, but on streamer criteria and also future programs as well. One area, too, that we'll also ask you to keep an eye out for is that we will be sponsoring a critical infrastructure symposium around the April timeframe of next year. We're still working with the national office to find out whether this event might be tied in to either the DoD briefs or the JETSI or maybe a standalone event. So please keep an eye out for announcements on that event. Again, I thank you very much for your attention. We're really excited about what progress we've made and where we're hoping to go in these next several months. And we're hoping that you're on board and will be part of that success. Thanks again.